This is VIP Painting News. We wish you wonderfully well this week, and in this presentation, we're going to prepare to plan to have artist Blake Levine discuss his Shohei Ohtani T206 paintings. What I am going to say as the artist and painter and drawer is that art has the ability to help heal, bring happiness, and move you with magic and momentum to all of your goals and dreams. Now, my background in Studio 54, where I was almost born, and my mother dancing with my dad quite often had me inspired in utero, where Andy Warhol would be many, many nights. Jean-Michel Basquiat and so many of the top people from that time, especially Andy Warhol, who was known to be at Studio 54 every night. From that beginning to the current time of being in California, and in 2025, it's been a remarkable journey so far. We've had major things like an earthquake, but even bigger, bolder, and better, and inspiring the youth, the adults, people in China, Japan, especially Hong Kong. I love the Wynn Hotel in Macau, which is sort of like the lucky Las Vegas there in Hong Kong, and not far is Macau. And even in Las Vegas, the Wynn and other places, Shohei Ohtani is bringing business. One of the things about California is about tourism, and when people come to see what they know as the person believed to be like Babe Ruth, they feel happy to spend money, and many of the luxury consumers go to Wynn Macau from Hong Kong. And years ago, many would come from Hong Kong all the way to the U.S., to Las Vegas, and become the whales that would support much of the needed revenue for the casinos in Vegas. Now, here in Los Angeles, we have such places like Rodeo Drive that are really at the epitome of luxury, of luck, of learning, and living a life. Now, so many have seen movies from Pretty Woman to Beverly Hills Cop to many, many more, even through history. So when they go to Bel Air or Holmby Hills or the Beverly Hills Rodeo Drive, they spend money on the luxury. Now, it's so important for baseball to be great for anyone, because it doesn't matter your age, your race, or your amount of money, but that luxury consumer has been cultivated. As an example, Las Vegas has hosts that do whatever it takes, including private planes and expensive top steak meals, bringing things to get consumers to go from Hong Kong to Vegas, even all the countries. So high net worth means so much. So now California boasts, not far from downtown Los Angeles, the Dodgers games. And one of the things about Vegas is they bring in top talent, as does Atlantic City, and all over the world, even Hong Kong. They have incredible shows in Japan and people all over. But very few are so known around the world. And when you say Japanese Babe Ruth, now since he was a boy, as I studied some about Shohei Ohtani, I learned that he's been on a path for many, many years. I went to make art even about his high school and toured where he went in Japan, and to see that he was already on a path to prosper. He was building his brain, his muscles, and to make the magic, and to have the dedication, even learning his dad was a semi-pro baseball player. It helped Shohei, it seems, to focus, to be concentrated, to be dependable. And I think of Babe Ruth in New York, where I'm originally from. I was born and raised in Manhattan. And Babe Ruth being on the Boston team and then later the Yankees, I say to myself, Babe Ruth had his own journey, and being around back then, which I wasn't. I was born in 1979, but Shohei Ohtani has shown a sort of simple way of being, but it's incredible, even working with a translator. And I watched in Arizona lots and lots of footage of spring training. As I used to go, I almost tried to be a pro baseball player and spent maybe 10 years playing, sometimes up to 8 or 9 hours a day, with my own dedication, wanting to be either Yankee or Dodger or something like that. But seeing him at spring training, where I used to go to collect autographs and meet many of the Yankees and other teams, it was magical to see him there and sort of on a smaller field, many fans being excited, and him doing well. Every first game in spring training last year, he gets up and does incredibly well with hits and then the home runs, and he sort of seems poised to what ability to, I'd say probably from elementary school he was playing serious sports. I know myself, I played Little League, so probably from the time he's 5 to 10, it seems he was building. By high school, he was already well there, and eventually they even had a person that came to the major leagues that moved to that school. So, you know, if you're cultivating Babe Ruth, it's not new. I talked about in another video LeBron James, where he was growing up. People knew he had the gift and ability. And I think that's the thing about Babe Ruth. You know, in New York, we had Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio. I met Joe DiMaggio and Mickey Mantle many times. And taking that, my lessons of meeting Joe DiMaggio, what it felt like, he actually took a girlfriend of my dad's to lunch, and they hung out for the day. And at the end, everybody got baseball signed. I remember being at the first card show that they were having Joe DiMaggio. It was about $5 for him to sign your bat, to sign your helmet, your jersey. So going from $5 to a big global industry, it's been such a journey. Mickey Mantle, I met him at the Regency Hotel. I'd see top stars as I collected signatures for my earlier journey. I wrote a book about that on 15. I remember from that, what it's like to be Mickey Mantle later in life and Joe DiMaggio. I think of what Babe Ruth was like and what Honus Wagner was like. And I think about how these days collecting, I have 2 kids and my daughter loves it, but my son even more loves understanding about different collectibles, even Asian collectibles and cards like Pokemon. So the thing about T206 Honus Wagner is there's a limited amount from Piedmont, and the way they stayed, if you had a card to keep it through 100 years, just as an example, in this recent year, the Hamptons, where I used to socialize and go to a lot of events and parties, a lot of the New York people, they had a huge fire. In California by Malibu, where I love to go to the beach, my kids just went to see their grandfather had lunch by the beach. Malibu had a huge fire. And really, they had it in Pacific Palisades quite there. So to keep a card for over 100 years, Texas had big fires, even in China and Hong Kong and Japan, so much difference of weather things that to do that is so rare. So I said, how could I make something that today you could enjoy for 2025? And I think about T206, and I imagine that back then, when Honus Wagner had his cards in the early to mid 1900s, there just wasn't the same amount, and to happen to get that T206 was so rare. So I've made a limited amount. One of the things about scarcity I've learned is if there are a plethora, like Pete Rose is famous, but there's so many, even Joe DiMaggio, from that $5 time, he made a lot of his money. Some of the athletes sort of came into much of their wealth doing card shows. So when they got up to $5,000 for special items, or could pay him even $150 to $500 over thousands of items, quite lucrative, but the amount of supply has somehow been successful because there is demand, but it's not quite the same. The T206 Honus Wagner, there's such scarcity and in special conditions. So I want to offer today the T206 Honus Wagner inspired, because I think of muses. I'm looking at a picture of Picasso on my wall. I'm looking at a photo of New York City. We have a Mother's Day, beautiful balloons. It was just Mother's Day. We have the Lakers. I love Jack Nicholson and the Lakers and everybody there, and Mother Teresa. And I say to myself, muses can be so much. And to me, many artists had all different ones, but I think of Honus Wagner as my muse. I looked at pictures of him. I looked at the original cards. I said, what if Honus Wagner could divinely help me? I read through this book, Think and Grow Rich, of channeling in business the people that you admire. Professor, I asked Honus Wagner, and he made it say to make it great. He seemed the way he sounded when I prayed to him through the Think and Grow Rich, the #1 business book of all time by Napoleon Hill, to sort of just get the art and get it right and keep going. And I think that's what many of the players I met, like Babe Ruth, had later been like Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio in New York, had the ability to just be so much in the moment and to be connected and kind, even to have that legendary feel. I remember meeting Joe DiMaggio, and even him sitting on that small stage at it's a church on the Manhattan. I won't share the whole name, but you can learn about it if you want. Many have went to card shows there, but him sitting there and signing things, and later seeing him sign for much more money. I have to say, having much more money, when he went out of the church with a bigger amount, it probably felt good the first day, but then years later, when it went from $5 to sometimes $500 per item, he came back to feeling he's a prosperous man. That's what I thought about the art. How do the Chinese in Hong Kong, they've had some property issues the last few years. Today, actually, is a beautiful bull day, which is why making the stocks are up so much in Hong Kong. I think Alibaba's up like 5 to 10% in one day. And in the U.S., we have the same. Some of our biggest tech companies are going up giant amounts. I think on $2-3 trillion, they're up 2 to 10% in one day. So with all that abundance, this is T206 Honus Wagner inspired. That's my muse, and it's called the Shohei Ohtani T206 Blake Levine paintings. There are several, and because they're so scarce, but they are new, I'm excited to offer them to the market, because I think if I were on the other side buying paintings like this in Hong Kong or anywhere in the world, I want to get the rarest and have my chance to have something super special. Because I know so much about scarcity, I plan next year to raise the pricing for sure. So whatever the prices you find this year, you can then see that they will raise next year. Whatever's left, in fact, if they're all sold, I may still make some, but they'll be different. So you'll have the 2025 year. Plus, it's a big year for baseball. Shohei went to Arizona for spring training. They rebuilt the Dodger Stadium where he plays all those games. There's also a lot of games which bring so much tourism to California. Even the other teams, when they travel around the U.S., many of the games get spikes in attendance and people shopping, traveling. They go to major cities. They do the Mets. They do Miami. They do all over. They're just back in Arizona this past weekend for Mother's Day. Even that Mother's Day, Shohei has a new baby and a wife. It's so interesting. Jeff Bezos' kids, their names are no longer online. And Shohei doesn't have the announcement of his child's name, which is quite fascinating. And I'm learning about art and accepting in a new modern world with lots of AI, how it's not always the same. When I was younger, there used to be photographers, if it's state, they would have been there, if it was 25 years ago. I even knew some, they would get all the information. But it's not like that. It's not just that. There's tons of other examples. So I'm learning that creating the art and actually having this YouTube channel, which I plan to help my daughter and myself as a director and an artist and a painter and a best-selling author. I have several books, including the first book on the psychology of adult coloring. Now, coloring has sold billions of books, and even it used to be kids, but now adults, just to get away from technology. There's so much. We're actually in negotiations with the top translation agent in Hong Kong, China, Japan, North Korea, and South Korea. She did big books like Forrest Gump, which many remember, the Tom Cruise film with Robin Wright Penn. Even Haley Joel Osment, who got in a little trouble this year, played Forrest Jr. So that's quite great to have the agent doing that and helping my book. So we'll see. We're waiting by the end of the year. We're supposed to know exact. We're pushing for a whole line of books and crayons and markers, all branded with the psychology of adult coloring, based on my book and the invention of the psychology of adult coloring. But anyway, that's why you getting in on this art, I feel, could be an opportunity. It could be wonderful. I made this long video because some of the people I'm inspired by, Emma Chamberlain, and I remember her at Coachella this year, and then she was at the Met Gala, and she makes long videos. So I made a short one today if you want to check out a brief commercial, and I love that. And if you couldn't stick with it the first time or at all, I understand it's hard to watch. If I watch Emma Chamberlain being at the top of YouTube views and being top of the Met Gala for influencers, I said to myself, not really just the Muse, but how would I say myself if I wanted to follow in the footsteps of someone gaining millions and millions of views, building their own brand? She has a coffee business, actually going to have a coffee next. But I say, how would I do that? So this longer form video shared my thoughts, my real ideas, and you could have behind the scenes art. I'm so inspired as I for my own self, and also to still have a Jack Nicholson Joker costume. That movie is so fun because many of us just need to let go of stress and be goofy and do it in a healthy way. So when I watch Jack as a Joker being silly, I think about that. But I watched behind the scenes of Jack talking about playing his role of Joker. He was so in-depth and he had so many great ideas. He even said that very few had used prosthetics on the mouth to give them a special. So he was willing to go there. So I said, how would I, in California, Shohei's doing all this where he plays, how would I go there? And there's been a lot that had the new baby, the wife going to Japan, even going to the White House to see President Trump, being all over the thing, and keeping the poise. And however it was, I look at the past, he stayed so poised from a little boy whenever he started playing baseball, his dad being a semi-pro, so learning, to now, with so much to achieve. And like I say often, you can receive, believe, and achieve. And Shohei does that. I do that as well, and I wish you the same. Please look at saatchiart.com. Blake Levine, I'll put the links below, and I wish you wonderfully well. It's been a journey to make these T206 Honus Wagner inspired Shohei Ohtani kanji Blake Levine paintings, but to me, it is well worth it.